Well, I went to Glenwood and grade 8 was a very successful year and I was a good sportsman. My rugby was very strong and I always looked up to the first side, the green machine, and it all just came down to the end of the year when finals and everything was pre-season training and we were training hard and studying for final exams for the year. And on the 26th of November, I started getting sick and getting headaches and stuff. And in that morning, I vomited, and one of my friends told me that I must go to the doctor. And I said, "Oh, okay, let's go." And I went to the doctor, and he said I got a bad flu. And he sent me home for a week or two. And 2 days later, on my birthday, 28th of November, in the morning, my dad just woke me up and said, "Hey, I should take you to the doctor." And went to the hospital early in the morning, and well, I'll tell you what all I remember. So I went to the hospital and I lay in the bed, and there was a guy next to me and spoke to him a bit, and then the next thing I remember was an ambulance strapped down and trying to get out, and then arrived at Albert Lutuli Hospital, and that's about all I remember.
Stevie's diagnosis on flu was incorrect. He had a bacteria formed in his auxiliary sinuses, and with the crack from the sinuses through to his brain, the bacteria found its way in. By the time we had him in Belido Hospital before Albert Lutuli, it was on the 28th, he was going into stage 2 coma. The bacteria basically started immobilizing the left side of his brain with direct results of non-motor coordination and speech and all sorts of those things. At that stage, Annika and I were without work, and things looked really tough. They said we've got to go down to Umhlanga Hospital and put down 200,000 rand. This was impossible for us to do at that stage, and with Stephan going downhill by the minute, we had to make other plans very quickly. The miracles in the story started happening there already. We didn't realize it. And a friend of mine walked out to the neurosurgeon, and 5 minutes later they came back into the room and said, "Stevie's cleared for Albert Lutuli." Our next problem that we got into was that we had no form of transport, because they wouldn't allow him out of the hospital unless he went to the ambulance. And frantically running around the best available ambulance, and the cheapest cost at that stage was about 5.5 grand to get him there. And no ambulance was available for at least the next hour. Rushed him down to Albert Lutuli, took him into the ER, and while he was in the ER, they sent me to reception to book him in. And while I was doing that, they were prepping him for surgery and doing a CTI scan on him and an MR scan to see exactly what was the problem. Because what I didn't say is that they actually picked up something in his brain in Belita, but they couldn't trace what it was. While I was filling in the forms, they actually asked me in reception. It's amazing, when I walked in there, I expected this great idea of, or let me put it to you this way, this vision of thousands of people inside a reception of a hospital, this perception that you get when you walk into a government hospital that everything is wrong. I was the only person in that reception, and it gave me this feeling of emptiness. And on the other side of the reception, this girl called me. She said, "Mr. Grossel," she says, "can you please come? I'm waiting for you." And I mean, I never knew anybody there, and she just called me by my name. And she said, "Can I help you fill in the forms? Your kid is lying in ER." And she filled in the forms, and she said, "Right, give me your job." I said, right now I don't have work." She said, "Oh, that's fine. Does your wife have work?" I said, "No, she doesn't have either." She says, "Well, I was going to charge you, but let's talk about that later. Go and check the well-being of your son." And as I rushed back to the ER, they found that the bacteria had basically started a swelling on the brain, and the only thing that they could do at that stage was to relieve the pressure and by operating on him as soon as possible. First op went well. They drained off the fluid. They reckon you need about 2 mils of fluid on your brain to create enough pressure to cause problems. They took about 26 mils off Stevie, the first op. He was put into ICU and later into high care, and we were just told that this procedure could happen once or twice or 30 or 50 times. They had no idea how long he'll be in hospital, and they told us to make ready for about 6 months. He deteriorated a lot after the first operation and stayed in coma because the bacteria just decided to flare up and started moving from this side of his brain to the top, and just started getting worse. On the third operation, I spoke to one of the neuros and I said, look, we just can't handle this anymore. What is going to happen? And he said, look, it's the only thing we can do, and you've just got to pray and just got to keep believing. And it's weird when you're in a situation like that, and I want to go back to Russ, one of your preachers, when you said that every time you left the hospital and you didn't know if you're going to go back and see your daughter alive. That's what we felt like. So for basically a month we would ride up and down from Albert Lutuli to Belito with that idea that we didn't know if we're going to get Stevie back. No answer comes and no help comes, and you see your kid lying in bed and he's having seizures every 30 seconds and they can't control it, and there's just wires and pipes and everything coming out of him. And you just run out of answers. And on the third op, the night of the third op, I came home and I found Anniki in the kitchen. And Anniki was reading through Stevie's phone, and she came across a verse of Isaiah 40:31. And she read it and she just packed up and she sat on the kitchen floor. And she prayed out loud, and I stood on the other side, and she says, Lord, he's yours, you can take him. And that was the break, because she said, you can have him, but if you give him back to us, we'll take him in any form, in any way you give us, but he's yours, you can have him. And the next morning we rushed down to Albert Lutuli. I went to ICU and I asked how he was doing, and they said, well, he's not here. And they said, try high care. And I just know that once he's had the op for the first 2 days, it's bad. And I couldn't understand, so I rushed through to high care. And I knew the nurse as well already at that stage. I said, how's my boy? She says, no, well, he's not here. Try go to general ward in neuro section. And I just didn't understand, so I rushed down there and I rushed into the neuro ward, and he wasn't there. And I asked one of the nurses, she says, no, your boy's doing well. We gave him a private room, just go and have a look around the corner. And when I came in there, Stevie was sitting straight up in bed. He couldn't talk, he didn't know where he was. But from 3 weeks prior to seeing this kid with endless seizures and no control over nothing and pipes, and the next day he's sitting on his bed, that is where everything changed. The night before, I've said it and I want to say it again, because it's when you surrender and you give it up to the Lord and say you can't do it on your own anymore, that's when things changed. However, the doctor said he won't play rugby again, and he won't do this and he won't do that, and he's a little bit behind the rest, and he survived with epilepsy. He just said, no ways, you can't do that. And he went back and he showed us how you can succeed in life. He showed us what it means to grow in Christ, to live in Christ, and just to live the life. So don't think that we find examples in adults in our life. We find it in him because he shows us the way. And this kid became a prefect of the BE, became a prefect of the school, and played rugby. And to the glory of God, because I can't say to the doctors, you guys did well, and they don't even know. They don't even know what they did. But at the end of the day, Stevie's sitting here, he's grafting a gap year for Linc, living for the Lord, showing how good life can be if you just let the Lord work in it.
Ken can throw a ball 80 meters across the field, and Russell's got muscles. But the young gun is around. His name is Stevie, so just watch it. My name is Stephan Meyer, and this is my comeback story.